Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the MMA Corner News Show as we go over the week's biggest stories. I'm your host, Josh Davis, alongside my featured news panel, all featured columnists at the MMAcorner.com, Mr. Eric Reiner. Eric, how you doing?
Doing great. Happy Sunday. Beautiful day here in Wisconsin.
Mr. Jason Shelkey. Jason, what's up?
Man, day number 4. It's another great time to do a show.
And the man with the plan himself, Trey Downey. Trey, what's going on, brother?
Nothing much. In honor of Ben Henderson's performance last night, let's just say this is going to be a smooth Sunday.
All right. I like it. Ben got his first finish in the UFC last night. Looked good doing so. But I got to be honest, that's not the story we're going to start off the show with. We are going to get right into everything. Guys, we got a lot to talk about, not a whole lot of time to run through it. It is official. UFC 178, September 27th in Toronto. Jon Jones finally signed the contract, and he will face Alexander Gustafsson for the light heavyweight championship. So, a couple of things that I want to get your guys' thoughts on. First, do you think this fight's going to be as good as the last one, or do you think Jon Jones is either going to whoop an ass or get his ass whooped in this fight? And number two, piggybacking off the same topic, Jon had come out recently and said he didn't want to fight Alexander, he wanted to fight Cormier. Do you think that he has earned the right to kind of pick and choose who he wants to fight? Let's start with you, Eric.
Well, I'm very tempted to say right off the bat that Jones is just going to mop the floor with Gustafsson again, mostly based on the fact that he, did a pretty good job of neutralizing the very formidable offense of Glover Teixeira in their last fight. Winning a scorecard sweep and looking pretty impressive in the process. Gustafsson obviously took Jon Jones to his absolute limit, and I'd like to think that Jon Jones has learned from that and will come out and really solidify his position atop the light heavyweight division. But I say that I'd like to say that because I'm one of the guys that thought Renan Barão was going to just do the same thing as I just described to T.J. Dillashaw, and T.J. Dillashaw not only won that fight, but he dominated it. So my mind's all messed up now, and I really don't know what's going to happen because we've seen a seemingly dominant champion fall to somebody who is a significant underdog. And so while my gut says that Jones is going to kind of do the same thing to Gustafsson as he's done to most of his other opponents, it's really hard to say. Just because of that fact, I think that it's a terrific fight. I think having Gustafsson having taken Jon Jones to his limit. As I said in the past, I think it makes for a great rematch. A rematch is always a good thing in the UFC, particularly when the first fight was really close and the losing fighter has kind of proven that he still belongs in the title picture. So whether Jon Jones has the opportunity to choose his own fights, I think that as a person who has garnered the number of wins in a row that he has and had the success that he has, I think that when it gets down to a point where there aren't that many contenders left, I think that Jon Jones deserves to have his say. Now, that being said, I don't think he has the final say, and I don't think he ever will. The UFC is a very tightly controlled organization, as we've seen, and while I don't think that they would necessarily let Jon Jones pick all of his opponents carte blanche, I do think that they're going to make it very much worth his while, paycheck-wise, in this rematch with Alexander Gustafsson.
All right. Trey, jump in here. Give us your thoughts.
Well, first of all, no matter who you are in the UFC, no matter if you're George St. Pierre, Anderson Silva, or now Jon Jones reaching the level that those guys got to, I don't think any fighter should have the right to pick and choose his own opponents. In football, basketball, any of the other major sports, you play for the title against the other teams who wins. Why in fighting should you be able to say, no, I don't want to fight this guy. I think I'd rather fight, someone else. I see Jones's point of view to a certain extent because he wants to, fight as many different contenders as possible, and Cormier is really the last contender in the light heavyweight division. So after that, who knows where Jones would go after that. But I also think it's really good that he's fighting Gustafsson because Cormier did say that he would take the fight, but Cormier was also contemplating knee surgery, and that he was going to put off that surgery to take the title fight. Now he's going to have the surgery, sit out, and wait for the title shot. And I mean, when we do see Cormier fight, whether it be Jones or Gustafsson for the title, I want to see a 100% Daniel Cormier in that fight, not a Daniel Cormier who's put off knee surgery to get there. As far as this fight goes, it's going to be a great fight. It's the biggest fight that the UFC can make this year. Other than, a lot of people are excited for the Chris Weidman-Lyoto Machida matchup. That's a good fight, but it doesn't get me the most excited I've ever been for a fight. I'm really excited for this John Jones Alexander Gustafsson fight. I was typing the recap for their first fight last year in Toronto when this fight went on, and I was literally, out of my seat, like typing standing up, just in pure shock and excitement of the way that fight went. It was absolute complete shock. And as far as Eric says about how the fight's going to go and comparing it to the Barao and Dillashaw fight, I think it's a little bit different than that fight, because the Barao and Dillashaw thing, it was Dillashaw completely shocking Renan Barao. Barao was not ready for that kind of fight. John Jones wasn't ready for the kind of fight that Gustafsson brought him the first time. So I think that the first fight between Gustafsson and Jones is more comparable to the Barao and Dillashaw fight. I think it will be another great fight. Gustafsson will have his moments, but I think ultimately John Jones is going to finish Alexander Gustafsson in this fight, and I think he'll do a little bit better in the takedown realm. I think he'll get Gustafsson in the ground in this one. And one last quick comment. I mean, is John Jones, Toronto's favorite son now? I believe this is going to be the fourth time he's fought in Toronto. And, I mean, it's almost poetic justice. I mean, I would love to see this fight in Sweden on Fox, but, I mean, seeing it return to the site of the crime, everything being in the same arena as last time. I mean, I also wouldn't put it past you. I don't know if it's been officially announced for Air Canada Center, but I think this fight could fill up the Sky Dome as well if they chose to put it there.
Shelky, jump in here.
All right, well, to your first point, I'm going to have to differ with Trey and Eric on this one. I think that it's going to be just as competitive, if not more competitive, than the first matchup. When you look at John Jones' last fight against Glover Teixeira, Teixeira is a one-trick pony. He's going to go in there, he's going to try and knock your head off. Whereas Gustafsson, he offers a much larger skill set that John Jones is going to have to deal with. And there are certain aspects of that fight that Gustafsson definitely got the best of Jones. Now, I think it's going to be the fight where we're going to see if John Jones is the true champion, if he's able to adapt, if he's able to learn from the mistakes that he made in the first fight, and prove that he is the best 205er on the planet. Now, to your second point, which was refresh my memory again. Oh, yes. No, I don't think that he's at the point that he should pick his own fights. I think once you reach the level of an Anderson Silva or George St. Pierre, where you basically cleaned out your division, you have nothing left to prove, then I think you're kind of in a position where you can say, you know what, I want to fight this guy, I want to fight this guy to solidify my legacy. John Jones, I believe, is still too early in his career to be able to say to the UFC, yes, I want this fight, yes, I want this fight, no, I don't want to fight this guy. Because I think that while he has been very dominant within the UFC in the lightweight division, he still has a while to go before he reaches that legend status that I believe you need to reach before you can pick and choose fights.
Well, a couple of things. First off, going into their fight the first time, I didn't give Gustafsson much of a chance. I thought that John Jones was going to walk through him like he had pretty much done everybody else. And watching the fight and seeing the things that Gustafsson was able to do, and I've watched this fight 100 times at least. It's not that he's more athletic than John, because he's not. He's certainly not bigger than John. John, again, looked like a heavyweight in that fight. The main thing is John struggled with the size, not necessarily the reach or anything like that. It was just the size, and I think a lot of what we saw was things that John was not expecting to have to deal with in Alexander. Now, going into the second fight, well, first, before we do that, I want to, again, go on record and make sure everyone's clear. I thought Alexander Gustafsson won that first fight. If I was a judge, I gave him the victory. There's no question in my mind that he should have won that fight. However, I don't think he's going to beat John Jones in a rematch. I think John is just too good. I do think he poses some matchup problems. I think we're going to see another exciting fight just because of the way these guys match up together. But again, I think it'll be John Jones leaving with his title. Now, as far as any fighter, whether it's John Jones, GSP, Anderson Silva, or Josh Davis, nobody under the UFC contract should be able to pick and choose their own fights. Now, when you've done certain things like what John Jones has, and you want to talk about your career and that kind of stuff, great. If you want to make career changes or do things for your career, then relinquish the light heavyweight title and move up to heavyweight. I mean, that's a career-defining move. Fighting Cormier instead of Gustafsson has nothing to do with a career-defining moment or any of that kind of stuff. For some people, it seems like you're docked in. For other people, it seems this, that, and the other. My feeling on it is this. Yes, any fighter, regardless of your stature, should be able to say, you know what, if given the opportunity, I would like to fight this guy or this guy in here is why. I think it's going to be an exciting fight. We match up well together. We have a beef, whatever the issue is, explain yourself. But again, like Eric stated, then it's up to the UFC to come in and say, all right, here's the guy we're matching you up against. And because you're a fighter under our contract, if you don't want to take the fight, then you're not going to fight. It's that simple. But nobody should be able to say, hey, I'm only going to fight this guy, because that completely ruins the sport. It takes away a promoter's ability to do anything. Because if fighters are able to pick and choose their own fights, there's no need for a promoter. Just find anybody who's got $1 and willing to rent out a space so you and some other guy can fight it. You can't have that. It's very important that the UFC is the one who picks and chooses who John fights within their organization. All right. With that being said, moving right along. This is big news, guys. I'm extremely excited about this topic. Invicta and the UFC have announced that moving forward, Invicta fights will now be aired on UFC Fight Pass. I think this is huge. We've always known that the UFC contributes some money to contracts and that kind of stuff, and they've have a very good relationship with Shannon Knapp, all of that kind of stuff. But for them to put this together and move forward with showing Invicta fights on Fight Pass, guys, what do you think of this? Let's start with you, Trey.
It's a huge deal for both Invicta and for Fight Pass. Fight Pass, I think it's a great service myself. I love it. I'm on it all the time, watching the extra fights. But some people still bash it. They say the fights, aren't, the UFC's wanting me to shell out more money for these fights that aren't necessarily even what people would put on the Fox Sports 1 cards and things like that. But people shell out the money, as seen from the times that Invicta's online pay-per-view streams have crashed. People get behind that product and they want to see it. So this is a big deal, and there's probably some customers out there who are going to purchase Fight Pass just to see these Invicta fights. And it's big for Invicta too, because Invicta has put on some amazing shows. They put on great cards in the past. I purchased the one that was on DirecTV pay-per-view, but as far as the online pay-per-views go, they were kind of, they had to give a lot of refunds, and they had to show the shows for free. And I think with the UFC and Fight Pass behind them, I think those streaming issues are behind them, and we're going to see top quality streams of top quality female MMA. And the big question with this is big for Invicta. and it's going to be interesting to see what it does for their organization. But at the same time, how long is it going to be before the UFC has they're showing these fights in other women's divisions under technically their banner with UFC Fight Pass? So how long is it going to be before it's almost like a WEC situation with the lighter weight classes before they go into the UFC? If Shannon Knapp eventually becomes part of the UFC and things like that, I think it could be a great move. And another thing is, we are more than likely going to see, in probably the first Invicta fight card on UFC Fight Pass, we are going to see Chris Cyborg fighting on a UFC network. So does that mean she's closer? I mean, it's a very interesting story, something that some people have expected for a while, but now that it's here, it's a great thing for both Fight Pass and Invicta, and only time will tell where this story evolves to.
Jason, jump in here. Give us your thoughts.
I think that this is great for Invicta because we all know that Invicta has kind of been a feeder organization to the UFC. So I think having the product on Fight Pass is going to be great because these women are going to get the exposure that they need and deserve. So whenever they do make their promotional debut within the UFC, the casual, the people that have the Fight Pass subscription know who these ladies actually are. And Trey also brought up a good point about the infrastructure that Invicta was initially using to digitally distribute their product and all the problems they're having with Ustream and Shannon basically coming out and saying that they're going to refund all this money. And when she did that, she had people by the thousands tweeting her saying, "No, keep my money." And so I think that shows how much of a backing that she has already for Invicta. And I think that once the product actually broadcasts on a digital platform and that has the infrastructure to handle the load that's going to come in to watch that product, it's going to just explode. It's going to become big, and people are going to love it. The fighters are going to get the exposure. It's going to help develop the UFC's women division, and I think it's a win-win-win for all parties involved. Involved.
All right, give us your thoughts.
Yeah, tough to disagree with anything Jason or Trey has already said. Certainly seems like a positive thing for Invicta, not only because of the exposure that the promotion is going to get, but also because, as Trey mentioned and Jason reiterated, the infrastructure that the UFC can bring. The production value of Invicta's shows are obviously going to go up. And, the UFC, as a result, has another feather in the Fight Pass cap, so to speak. Just one more thing that they can offer and entice fans who haven't yet purchased UFC Fight Pass to pick it up. But I think the real winner here, beyond all of it, is women's MMA, generally speaking. Because I think with Invicta being an exclusively female promotion, I think that fight fans who might right now, I don't want to say still be opposed to women's MMA, but perhaps are less familiar with it. Certainly the UFC has at most offered a handful of women's fights, but the vast majority of their cards are dominated by male fights. So I think having Invicta being an exclusively female promotion, I think that fight fans are going to learn what all of us here on this show know, that female MMA is 100% as exciting and as awesome to watch as men's MMA.
Honestly, a couple of things here. First off, I think this is Dana White, doing a complete 180 to where he was at, let's say, 5, 7, 8 years ago, when he constantly said that women would never fight in the UFC. Now, not only are the women fighting, they have 2 divisions, and now they're moving forward with broadcasting not only women fights, but the #1 female organization out there, and in a lot of respects, the most exciting organization, period. Whether you're the UFC, the MFC, Bellator, as far as overall exciting fights, Invicta has everyone beat on a consistent basis because they do consistently give fans exciting fights. And as female MMA continues to take the world by storm, it's Invicta that are putting on these fights that everyone wants to see. And like Shalky said, when they had the issues with Ustream and Shannon was refunded money. So many people came out and told her to keep the money because the two fights that they did see were so exciting that it was worth it. So I think this is great for Invicta. They're now finally on a platform where they're not going to have any of these kind of issues. They get to work with the industry leader, the UFC, which, I mean, how could you not want to do that? And then this is great for the UFC because, again, most of the women that they're that they're pulling into the UFC is coming from Invicta. Not all the fighters, but most of them. So this is a great way for them to help groom future talent. I think this was a smart business move on everybody's part. This is great for the fans. Now, guys, if you don't have Fight Pass, you need to get out there and get on it. It's $10 a month. It's definitely well worth it. And as they add Invicta, and I'm sure probably all of Invicta's library will go on to Fight Pass as well, it's certainly going to be a good thing. So I think it's great. I'm excited for it. I cannot wait for the next Invicta event. And yeah, I think it's going to be great for fans and for us media moving forward. You know, it's going to make it a whole lot easier. I mean, we've covered every Invicta event where nobody covers women's MMA as much as the MMA Corner does, but it will give other people opportunities to continue to cover that aspect of the sport. All right, moving right along. I don't even know what to say about this story, guys. I do find it very interesting, and I am anxiously awaiting to see what the outcome of this story is going to be. Now, Vitor Belfort admitted that he failed a drug test for elevated levels of testosterone, which is pretty much the end of TRT and MMA. I don't see how anyone's going to be allowed to do it when they're not fighting, when they are fighting. The end of TRT and MMA. With Belfort slated to face Chael Sonnen at UFC 175 in July, should the Nevada State Athletic Commission give him a license, knowing that he's been on TRT as recently as what, 2 weeks ago? And if they don't, then what does the UFC do with filling out this fight? So, two-part question. Let's start with you, Jason. Give us your thoughts. I'm sorry. Let's start with you, Trey.
Okay. There's been a lot of things about Vitor Belfort and, you know, the whole TRT scandal and stuff like that. He did finally come out and admit that he failed that drug test that he took at the World MMA Awards. But, you know, what can you say at this point? It's going to be the only thing that we have left to see is who's going to fight Chael Sonnen at UFC 175, and I honestly think we still don't know. You know, it's a crazy scenario. The whole scenario of that whole fight is crazy. You know, Vanderlei Silva, when he came out with his video response about him running away from the drug test or whatever happened there, said that he still thought he was going to fight Chael Sonnen at UFC 175. You know, Vitor applied for the license in Nevada a few weeks before this all went down, and the UFC, I'm sure the UFC knew the results of that drug test. So the UFC knew that he had elevated levels. So in all honesty, I really don't think that the UFC would have, you know, made this fight and announced it if they really didn't think that Vitor Belfort was going to get licensed. It's been said that since that, more recently, Vitor's been supplying the Nevada Commission with almost weekly drug tests. So I tend to believe that if he has been supplying them with those drug tests and he's been clean for that period of time, I think that the fight's still going to happen at UFC 175. But as far as a backup plan, there are some viable, you know, especially middleweight contenders that they could throw in there with Chael, maybe even possibly fight at 205. You've got Luke Rockhold, Tim Kennedy, even Gegard Mousasi or possibly CB Dalloway, all coming off of, you know, really good performances that we could possibly see in there against the American Gangster on 4th of July weekend. I really hope we see the Vitor fight because I think that's one of the more intriguing fights of the year. But that's still this point. We're going to have to wait and see till June 17th. Nobody knows for sure, especially with these guys.
I think we have Jason back. We'll go to Jason. Shelky, give us your thoughts.
All right, so there's a whole lot of questions that are unanswered at this point in time because we don't know at this point in time if Vitor Belfort's going to get his license. The hearing's going to be coming up, I believe, on the 17th, where he's going to appear in front of the Nevada State Athletic Commission, and they're going to determine his fate, if he's going to get licensed or not. I think with the failed drug test, and with whatever happened with Vanderlei Silva, nobody really knows. I think that it would be wise if the UFC had a backup plan in case that Vitor doesn't get licensed, because obviously they've completely scrapped the idea of having Vanderlei Silva. Plan B is having Vitor Belfort, and if the Nevada State Athletic Commission doesn't grant him a license, who's going to step up and take on the gangster from the mean streets of Westland, Oregon, on short notice? And I think Trey threw out some really good names. I think that the best option would probably be CB Dollaway, because he's at that point of his career where he's on a roll, and this is possibly going to be his last run. He's been around for a while, and if everything else falls through, that is a fight I'd really like to see. I think it'd be a really good competitive fight, and but I'm kind of at a loss of words because this whole situation is so messed up that who knows what's eventually going to happen, because it's just been drama week after week after week as far as who's going to be fighting Chael Sonnen. So, but I think we'll find out a lot more on the 17th after Vitor has his hearing with the Nevada State Athletic Commission.
All right, jump in here.
I think that past transgressions, while they, I suppose, need to be considered, to me it's kind of a black and white thing when it comes to licensing a fighter. If that fighter, completes all of the requisite tests and applies for all the licenses that he needs to and passes all the screenings and whatever, then he should be allowed to fight. Whether those screenings are prompted by the Athletic Commission themselves or by the UFC, I think that putting Vitor Belfort in a spotlight like this is obviously a fairly big risk. And as Trey alluded to, I don't think the UFC would have announced this fight so soon if they didn't think that Belfort was going to get licensed. So I do think this fight is going to happen. I would be very surprised if it didn't, but anything can happen in the world of mixed martial arts, as someone once almost said. As far as a replacement, I'm going to throw out two other names here. I realize, Daniel Cormier probably having the knee surgery, probably out of action, but perhaps, with the success he had against Dan Henderson at 205, perhaps an increase in paycheck could persuade him to put off that knee surgery just a little while longer. It would be a very, very quick turnaround, and again, probably not going to happen. But Sonnen versus Cormier at 205, I think that that's a fight that would sell some tickets.
Well, I think a lot of this is speculation, and so I'll bring it all back into reality. First off, yes, Vitor failed the drug test, fully admitted to it. Here's the deal. The Nevada Athletic Commission, first going back to Vanderlei Silva, made it very clear that they would still license Vanderlei even after his incident at the gym. All they said is he has to apply for licensure and pass the drug test. So if they are willing to do that for Vanderlei, it leads me to believe as long as Vitor continues to supply them with samples showing that his elevated testosterone levels are dropping and that he's not still using, he eventually submits a clean urine sample, has his hearing on the 17th. I think Vitor's getting licensed. I really don't think it's that big of a deal. Now, I've worked with the Nevada State Athletic Commission with some fighters that I personally manage, and trust me, these guys want to license fighters. They want fighters to fight. They want people to make money. They want people to support their families. So as long as you are doing everything legally, these guys are going to license you. And so the reason I bring that up is because of my relationship that I've had with them in the past. It leads me to believe that as long as Vitor submits a clean urine sample, that they are going to license him and allow this fight to happen. Now, let's say, again, worst case scenario, and this is all speculation, it doesn't happen. If Chael stays on this card, he's only going to be fighting a top tier opponent, an opponent that is going to get him a title shot. That was why the fight with Vitor was so intriguing to him, because he knows that if he wins, he is going to get the winner of Machida Weidman, and that's really what Chael is looking for. While I love Chael Sonnen in many respects, I think he is good for MMA. We all know that his fight career is winding down. He doesn't have a whole lot of fights left in him, and especially now that he can no longer use TRT, I think we're going to see a lot less of Chael inside the octagon, so he needs some fights that matter. And so, again, like everyone said, I would be shocked if this Vitor fight didn't happen. I would be shocked if the Nevada State Athletic Commission didn't license Vitor, as long as he continues to submit samples that are showing a drop in his testosterone and then eventually a clean sample. So with that being said, let's move on. Final topic of the day. Cole Miller injured his hand. He's out of the main event with Conor McGregor in Dublin this July. Miller's been replaced by former Ultimate Fighter Diego Brandao. Now, first off, I will say this. I didn't think the Conor McGregor-Cole Miller fight made any sense, other than the fact that Cole Miller liked to talk trash about Conor, and they had their battle of words. I love Cole Miller. I think he's a great fighter. I just don't think he's on the level of Conor McGregor. To me, that fight didn't make any sense. I did think that was certainly a fight that Conor should win. I wanted to see Conor fight a much higher ranked opponent. I wanted to see Conor really fight someone in the top 10. The UFC has now replaced him with Diego Brandao. In all honesty, guys, this is also a fight that I personally am just not excited about. It doesn't really do much for me. We've seen issues that Diego Brandao has had in the past. Who knows if he's even going to make it to the fight and not say anything that gets him pulled from the fight, or that he's going to make weight and be ready to go. So the UFC is putting a lot of eggs in Diego Brandao's basket, and he's done things to burn them in the past. Again, like the comment he made about wanting to kill Dustin Poirier and all that kind of stuff. You know, who's to say he's not going to do something like that again? So for me, I was just a little shocked that this was the particular matchup that they chose. Now, with all that being said, as far as the fight goes, I do think this could be a very exciting fight. But guys, give me your thoughts. Let's start with you, Shelky.
You know, I'm kind of disappointed, as I get what you're saying, that Cole Miller probably wasn't the right fight for McGregor in the first place. But with all the trash talk and the hype leading up to the fight, you know, they did a really good job selling it. And now you're putting in Diego Brandao, who has been his own worst enemy in his UFC career, like you stated, with him talking about wanting to stab people and all the other fiascos that he's had in his UFC career. Who knows if he's going to even be able to make that fight, you know? So, you know, does the UFC have a plan C in case Brandao, you know, flips his lid and does something that, you know, make the UFC brass mad? And, you know, I would really like to see McGregor truly challenged. I think that either, you know, both these fights, Cole Miller and Diego Brandao, is a kind of a step down where he needs to be given fights to help propel him within the division. So, you know, I'm not very excited about the fight, but obviously it's still going to stand out.
Eric, jump in here. Give us your thoughts.
I used to live with a couple of roommates, and on the weekends, sometimes when we wouldn't go out, we would just stay at home and we would play Mario Kart for Wii. And one of the things that I loved to do when we played Mario Kart for Wii is talk trash to my roommates because they took the bait. And it would psychologically make them perform way worse. And they'd just get madder and madder and madder. And I would just keep talking trash right on my way to a number of consecutive victories. Those were the days. here's my point here. I love this matchup simply because Conor McGregor is a provocateur, as we've already seen. And Diego Brandao is going to be more than willing to take Conor McGregor's bait. And I think their stare down in the weigh-ins prior to this is going to be one of the most intense, entertaining things that we've seen here in the UFC. And I also think that the fight, because it's in Ireland, because Conor McGregor is such a local hero, I think I heard, or maybe I read on Twitter that the fight event sold out in like 3 minutes or something like that. Diego Brandao is going to come in, intense, ready to go, because Conor McGregor is going to talk a lot of trash about him in the pre-fight. So I think the UFC is very cognizant of that fact. They're very conscious of the fact that Diego Brandao has such a fiery temper, and they know that Conor McGregor is going to do something to provoke him. So it's just entertainment at this point. I love it for the UFC's return to Ireland, especially in an event headlined by such a popular fighter in Conor McGregor.
Trey.
All right, one thing I'm disappointed that Cole Miller had to pull out of this fight, and one thing I'll disagree with Josh on is that Cole Miller was not the right fight for Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor, his 2 wins in the UFC are over Marcus Brimage and Max Holloway. I don't think that qualifies him as automatically deserving of getting a top 10 guy. Maybe because it's the main event, and maybe to see how for real Conor McGregor is. But I think Cole Miller's been on one of the best streaks of his career. He's looked great in his past couple fights. So I thought that was a fight that really made sense, and they've had heat for a while. As far as Diego Brandao stepping in, I don't really think that it's the right move. I think a better move would have been someone that McGregor has been calling out for a while, and a guy who just recently beat Diego Brandao, and Dustin Poirier, a training partner of his original opponent in Cole Miller. I think that would have been a huge challenge for Conor McGregor. But in all honesty, I've got to be blunt here. I think that the UFC wanted to give Conor McGregor a winnable fight in Ireland. There were possibilities. They could have moved Dennis Bermudez or Clay Guida up a week or two from that San Jose card to take this fight in the main event. Guida called out McGregor after his last win. People would have been excited about that fight. Brandao's kind of pulled out of nowhere. He's not had the greatest performances over his past couple fights. I think that it'll still be an entertaining fight. Brandao is a guy who definitely comes forward, and we saw with the whole Poirier thing that he's not a guy who's gonna hide anything, and he wants to straight up come. He's gonna come right at McGregor, especially if McGregor starts trash talking him in the cage. It's just going to be a matter if with McGregor's injury with his knee, if he's still able to have that great movement that he showed in his first 2 fights and get out of the way and catch Diego Brandao. I'm still excited for this fight, but it's not the best fight that we could have seen. I still wish we could have seen McGregor and Cole Miller.
Again, I love Cole. I just don't think he matches up well against Conor. I don't think he can deal with Conor striking, and I don't think that if the fight goes to the ground, I don't think Conor would find himself in a position where Cole could submit him. I don't think it's a winnable fight for Cole. Now, I do like Cole. I love his potential. I love watching that kid compete. Here's where I'm at with Conor. You bring up the fact that he's only got the 2 victories in the UFC. Max Holloway is a beast. That kid's one of the best young up-and-coming talents in all of MMA. He's the only person in the world thus far that has taken Conor McGregor to a decision. You can't just say that beating Max Holloway isn't a notch in your belt, because it is. That guy has skills. I would have liked to seen Conor face Dustin Poirier. To me, when you're thinking about the future of the division and how you want to move this kid's career forward, I think the Poirier fight would have made a lot of sense in the fact of, hey, we can now really see, is Conor a true top 10 featherweight? Or is he just a guy that has a lot of hype, hasn't really fought in the tough guys, and has been able to pad his record? That's what I want to know. That's why I would have pushed a much tougher fight. But Trey, I have to say you hit the nail on the head. They want to give Conor a winnable fight without question. They want to build the brand in Ireland. They want to be able to go back there and monopolize that market. And you can't do that if your golden Irish boy gets his ass whooped. So it's got to be a winnable fight for him. I agree with you 100% there, and I think Diego Brando fits that build. It will be, like Eric said, Brando's a guy who will take Conor's bait, and they will jaw-jack back and forth. They will be able to put a lot of hype behind this fight, and it will be a fight that does exactly what it's supposed to. Assuming Conor wins, it'll help boost his career, and it'll make a lot of money. It'll sell a lot of seats. So that's the main thing. But again, from a fan aspect, from a media aspect, all that kind of stuff, I'd have loved to seen a Dustin Poirier. But this is why I'm not Joe Silva. This is why I'm not, Dana White, and I don't have any stake in what the UFC does. All right, guys, let's get into final topics. I want to start with you, Eric.
Historic moment here in my state of Wisconsin this past Friday. 61 couples got married right here in Dane County at the City County building, just a few blocks from where I live here in downtown Madison. And why is that significant? Because earlier that afternoon, a federal judge ruled that Wisconsin's constitutional amendment banning same-sex marriage violated the Equal Protection Clause in the federal Constitution, thus, for now, and this is sort of a legal gray area still, nullifying that state constitutional amendment. So dozens of same-sex couples lined up, got marriage licenses, got married. For my money, it was a beautiful moment in Wisconsin history, and certainly something to celebrate here in Madison. Why is this relevant to MMA? Just as I would hope these progressive laws continue to be passed, or rather the restrictive laws continue to be overturned, I view MMA as one of the most progressive sports in the sporting pantheon here in America. And I think that it's almost ironic, because I think MMA often wrongly gets accused of being barbaric. Here's why I think it's one of the most progressive sports out there. Really because no matter who you are, no matter what background you come from, no matter your race, your gender, your sexual orientation, if you're willing to do the work, people in the MMA world will accept who you are. And I think it's for this reason. Anybody can really decide up until a certain age that they'd like to try being an MMA fighter. And in order to do that, you literally have to spend months or years getting your ass kicked. You are going to get punched, you are going to get kicked, you are going to get choked, you're going to have limbs stretched, you're going to get kneed in places on the body that should never come in contact with a human knee, especially coming in at the level of force that we're talking about. It is one of the hardest sports to break into, and but ironically, you can kind of do it without having done so since age 8, like football, like basketball, like baseball, things like that. So if you're willing to do the work, the MMA world will accept you. That's certainly the case at the gym where I train, and it seems that that's the case in the MMA world by and large. I'm sure there are unfortunate exceptions to that rule, but we've seen MMA feature female athletes in ways that other sports simply have not. We've seen MMA feature homosexual athletes, gay and lesbian athletes in a light that has not been done so by the other sports. So MMA is a very progressive sport, and I think that's just one more thing to love about it.
I have to echo that 100%. It doesn't matter what your sexual orientation is. Really, it doesn't matter what anything is, your color, none of that crap matters. All that matters is that you want to compete and have a good time. And to be real honest, I don't care if you're Fallon Fox. I don't care if you're Matt Mitrione or whoever it may be. If you go in there and you put in the work and you're an ass-whooping machine, I'm going to watch you fight, period. Plain and simple. Because I'm excited by the things that you do inside that octagon. Nothing else matters, period. It really doesn't. And so as a society, I think we really need to wrap our heads around this and get on board with it, because to be real honest, there have been gay, transgender, lesbian, bisexual, homosexual, whatever you want to call it, for as long as there's been man and woman. It's nothing new. It didn't just happen overnight. It's been this way for as long as there's been man. You know, it's just one of those things. So everybody needs to put their biases aside and get on board with it. And I think that is one hell of a thing. And kudos to Wisconsin. All right, Trey, get in here.
All right. Well, after seemingly months of speculation, the biggest card in World Series of Fighting history has a date and location officially. Some might have thought it would have been Miami, Vegas, Denver, Tampa, were all possible locations. But it came out this week. Big Time MMA is returning to my neck of the woods in Central Florida, and the World Series of Fighting card on July 5th is going to Daytona Beach in the Ocean Center. It's a very interesting thing for numerous reasons. Daytona Beach is one of the biggest tourist destinations. I don't know if I'd go as far in the world, but it is the world's most famous beach. I frequent that place a lot, and there's tourists everywhere. And the fact that it's going to be on 4th of July weekend, there's going to be a ton of people in the area. And another big thing, NASCAR, Daytona International Speedway, one of the biggest tracks in NASCAR. People tune in for those races all the time. The Daytona 500 is the Super Bowl of NASCAR, and they come there every 4th of July weekend for used to be called the Firecracker 400. Now the Coke Zero 400 is a 4th of July weekend tradition. The interesting part about this is World Series of Fighting has their fight at the Ocean Center, the main card airing from 4 to 6 p.m. The NASCAR race, which is at the Speedway, probably maybe between 5 and 10 miles away, the green flag drops at 7:30. Last year, 90,000 people attended the Coke Zero 400. So it's going to be interesting to see with traffic and everything like that if this gamble is going to pay off for World Series of Fighting, because it could be huge if some of those tourists that are in town, stop by the Ocean Center and see some great MMA fights headlined by Justin Gaethje and Nick Newell. But if people are going to the race, it's going to be interesting to see if they have the time to come back. I wouldn't be opposed to catching the end of the fights and maybe possibly missing the green flag just because traffic's going to be crazy down International Speedway Boulevard. But I think it's a big deal for World Series of Fighting. And besides Vegas having International Fight Week, the other center of the sports world on 4th of July weekend is Daytona Beach, Florida. And it's nice to see that in my neck of the woods.
It really is. And to be honest, there's not really a sport that has the following that NASCAR does. Now, there's bigger sports. I mean, obviously, the NFL is much bigger than NASCAR, but the NFL doesn't have the psychotic following that NASCAR does. I mean, these people go all over the country to watch these guys drive around in a circle. It's crazy. They love that stuff. They love their NASCAR. And so for the World Series of Fighting to really go into Daytona and piggyback off what NASCAR is doing, I think is a great business move. I really do think that it's smart, and I think it's going to play well for them because, again, they're going to be able to lead right into that. It's a perfect segue for them. And, again, it's a way to get into another market of a sports industry, because if you can steal 10 NASCAR fans with their psychotic mentality of we just follow a sport wherever it goes, it is going to do good for business. All right, Jason, jump in here. Give us your final thoughts.
Okay, first I would just like to piggyback off of something that Eric said really quick. I hope that someday before I leave this planet that, it doesn't matter if you're black, white, Oriental, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, that a person can look at another human being, and that's exactly what they are, another human being. So, but anyway, I want to end on a little bit of a lighter note. If you watched our Bellator show on Friday, you know that I was a huge fan of the way Bellator promoted the Eric Prindle James Thompson fight as the freak show it was. I absolutely loved every minute of it with the T-Rex and the meteors and the kicks in the balls. I absolutely loved it. And I wish more promotions, that put on these fights that are just basically sideshow acts on the card would embrace it, because it's something that fans can really get behind. I mean, everything about MMA doesn't have to be serious. So, for Bellator to realize that and to put that fight on for what it was, I think is great. And I really hope they sign Kimbo Slice, because I want to see Kimbo Slice versus James Thompson too. That would be the most epic fight from just a fun point of view that Bellator can do. Take it, handle it the same way you did the Prindle Thompson fight, sell it for what it is, and let the fans just be in cloud nine, just watching a fun fight that doesn't matter.
And that's exactly what it would be, is a fun fight that doesn't matter. And again, when you're thinking about just simple promotion and marketing, they easily could promote that fight for what it is, a fun fight that doesn't matter. Fans, you guys want to see these two get it on? Well, we're actually going to promote that fight for you. I think it's, again, I'm not for degrading the sport and making fights that don't have any kind of meaning to the sport. This is one of those exceptions. Granted, it doesn't have a whole lot of meaning to the sport, but it is a fight that a lot of fans would want to see. So I'm all for Bellator producing it. I think it would probably be a good business move for them. All right, Fight fans, that is our show for the week. Definitely make sure that you tune in next Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Mountain Time, every Sunday for the MMA Corner News Show. For my news panel, I want to say thank you. I am Josh Davis. We will see you next Sunday. Until then, keep living the MMA Corner lifestyle.